Hello everyone that's in the room here and everyone on the internet. This is a 2-hour session and I know that sounds like a lot. I have a lot of things to tell you. It should be pretty fun. This is going to be interactive. I'm not going to ramble for 2 hours straight. You guys are going to get involved. If you need to take off, you're feeling wiggly, you just want to walk around, that's fine. You guys have flights. I'm not worried about it. You will not hurt my feelings. We're going to talk a little bit about what we did in the last year. That's Pocket PCC. Probably half of the session will be about what's coming new. It's a longer version of my speed talk from Wednesday morning. We'll talk about what's on the roadmap coming up. If you want to configure your personal account, we're going to do that. We'll look at some practice-wide efficiencies that you can make changes to, and then talk about some drug-specific issues, some tips and tricks and things like that. So lots coming up. For everybody that's here and those of you on the internet, is there anything you really hope I'm talking about today? You can tell me later. Oh. Shortcuts. Oh, we got lots of those. We got lots of shortcuts coming. Anything in particular? Yes?
Electronic prior authorization.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it. Yeah, okay. Electronic prior authorization.
Favorites.
Okay, we might get to some favorites. The thing is, I have like 4 days worth of stuff to tell you in 2 hours, so we'll see what we get to. Okay, without further ado, let's take a trip back in time. We had a little bit of goodies in 10.1. Most of the cool stuff from the last year was in 10.2. That was prescribing from your phone. 10.3 was the infrastructure release. Don't tell any, but those are kind of boring. That's really important for your system, but you don't get any new changes. And so, as I mentioned on Wednesday, we didn't want to have a 10.3 release with nothing in it. And then 10.4, if we were focused on EPA and we didn't make it, then you wouldn't have had any new goodies. So instead, we switched gears a little bit, which we'll get to momentarily. So if you didn't know, you can prescribe from your phone. I had a cute conversation earlier this week, and they said, I know I can process pending prescriptions, but when can I write new prescriptions? You can right now. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. My example on Wednesday morning was about sending a pending prescription, but you can basically do anything from Pocket PCC. When we decided we were ready to move forward with this, we could have made a completely new ePrescribing platform that matched the vibes of Pocket PCC. That's what would have taken 2 years. Every time I said this project will take a really long time, we'd have to be recertified. Instead, Dewey has this light bulb, and he says, you know what? And maybe you guys don't necessarily appreciate this. Inside the framework of the EHR, when you click on that ERX button, you're hitting a web-like product. So you're going out there. And he said, we could just do that in Pocket PCC. So really all that's happening when you're in Pocket PCC, when you click PCC ERX, you're going to that same web application. The tricky part, which is where all the work came in, was optimizing it so it looked good on your phone, because you could see the size of it on your computer very different than your little phone. So most of that work was done to make this fully mobile responsive. If you haven't done this yet, take your phone the regular way, turn it sideways, you get more real estate. So that makes it easier to prescribe on the go. The more we thought about this, there were some limitations that we couldn't make happen. But for the most part, it should be exactly the same tool. You can send both Legend and EPCS prescriptions, so there's no reason that you can't do the stuff that you're doing back in the office. You do need your hard token, and I know that that's a bummer. That there's nothing I can do about that one. That's between you and the DEA. You will have to have your hard token for that. If you forgot where your hard token is and you really want to send those Adderall prescriptions, please let us know. Oh, we've already got a face. Oh, no. Where is your hard token? Great question. That's okay. When you first start with EPCS, we give you one, and people say, that's cool, and then you give it to a kid to play with, and it turns out you need it. So we will get your replacement. You can have one replacement per year, so keep track of it. Can someone write that down? We're going to get her a token. Yes?
I have Authy on my tablet and on my phone.
I know.
But will that work?
It will not work. We had to, there's no way for Authy to know where you're sending it from. So in order for that to be across the board, make sure we couldn't do it from your phone, we had to disable it completely. I know, I totally get it. Let's see. So, okay. Once we got going with this, we talked to a bunch of prescribers, and we said, what about the RX queue? You know, the place that you're seeing all your different task types. And we determined that probably the only thing you would need most of the time was the pending prescriptions. And so you do have an RX queue, but it's only those pending prescriptions. That's something that you started and didn't finish sending, or your staff prepared for you and you might need to process it on the go. Maybe later we'll add some other stuff if it becomes relevant for you, but in most cases I think it was the pending prescriptions. Is there anybody really wishing for renewal requests or change requests, things like that? I feel like people don't really like renewal requests anyway. They get a bad rap. We disabled printing because if you're at the campground or the kids' soccer game, are you next to your printer with that special prescription paper? Probably not. So if anybody's really missing the printing, we can talk about it, but we figured that was a good move. And we have mixed feelings on this one. Retail RX history. This is the service that you can reach out to SureScripts and the pharmacy benefit managers to find out more about your patients. That might feel like information you want if you're not familiar with that patient, if you're on call. That component in particular, and we'll look at it in a little bit, it's really complicated. And to be able to squish it down into your phone for the value that you would get and how often you might use it just didn't fit for the scope for this one. We do have those RX queues, and I want to show you a little bit about the differences here because I think you may not necessarily know that there's two different types here. If you don't look at these slides and think about the EHR, you have that big RX queue. It's with your visit tasks and your messages. That's the full office for everybody. We call it the multi-patient queue. You have filters there where you can filter it just to yourself or just your location, different task types. There are no filters in Pocket PCC, but you do have a patient-specific queue that is only just that patient, and then it's only pending prescriptions. And so when you go to the RX queue, if you're like, Morgan, why in the world? I have everybody's prescriptions, and I don't want to look at those. I know, there's no filters right now. But if there's a particular patient that you're after, just go to their chart, and you can look at that patient-specific queue in order to process that pending prescription. This individual patient-specific queue is available in the EHR, and some of you might have used it, not necessarily known. If you like to prep up a couple prescriptions and send them, you might be going there today. How is Pocket PCC going for you guys? I said the stats the other day. There was like 800,000 prescriptions in 3 months from the EHR and only like 2,000 from their phone. And then a dear friend said, don't feel bad about that. We're happy we have it. You just don't need it all the time. And so I will not stress about that. Is there anybody who hasn't had a chance to use it yet? Or is there anything that's happening in Pocket PCC that's preventing you from using it effectively? Or it's just you just haven't had to use it yet? Things are groovy? Yeah, we got a question in the back.
It's not a question, it's, I love it.
Oh, that's great.
When you introduced it, I was like, I'm not going to use this.
Yeah.
And like the next night, I was in bed at midnight and used it. And it was, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Dewey worked really hard on this, and then the team went to town on testing this. And this was just so cool to be able to finally get this out there. All right, that's Pocket PCC. And then here's the van again, and we're like cruising down the road here. We're going on our road trip. We've got a bunch of stuff coming, and I was calling it the groovy stuff because I'm a little bit silly, and I didn't know what else to call it. They're like pediatric delighters. That's what's coming this fall. EPA truly is that cross-country road trip. That one is heavy. There's a lot that's going on there. It is coming. I know this one is very important. This is going to be great. I would say it's probably early to mid next year. And Dewey's probably going, oh no, that I just said that. But we are switching gears to finish the work on this right after the 10-4 stuff that I'm about to show you. So it is coming. We want input on everything I'm about to show you and EPA. We don't design this stuff for us. This is for you, and if it's not going to make sense, we want to make sure we can do something about that. So in the meantime, with the EPA, you will still have to use Cover My Meds and those other places to do it manually. But we will talk about that more in the future. I'll mention this at the end, but we meet once a month for an ERX drop-in. I know you're busy, but if you want to stop by and talk to us more often, we do meet once a month, and I'll give you the upcoming dates. So this is where we show prototypes, we talk about what's coming, and the EPA, the further we get, the more you'll be able to see with that. All right, first up with the 10-4 release, I'm going to say 10-4 a lot, and I know that you don't memorize these numbers. I wouldn't either. This is probably mid-October. So 10-4 coming in the fall. Some of the things I'll talk about, we have to switch a little bit back to what it looks like in production. So I'll try to make that pretty clear what's happening today and then what's coming in the future. I didn't talk about this one on Friday. If you're a provider in the room, you're probably already through EPCS, so you weren't going to be like, at the edge of your seat waiting to hear this. But this is great news for new providers joining your practice. The nurses and the office managers that help with this process, this is a big relief coming your way. So ePCS, the electronic prescribing of controlled substance, in order to take advantage of this service, you have to go through identity proofing. We got to make sure it's you. And that today, it works. It's a little bit painful. You've seen these questions, and it says, how much did you pay for your car loan 20 years ago? And you're like, okay, that's cool information. We find sometimes, and it makes sense in your relationship at home, you may not be the one focused on the mortgage. And so people say, I don't know the answers to these questions. And you pick a couple answers, and then you might fail. The process today, about 50 to 60% of people get through it the first time. So you can do the math. That's not great news for the other 40%. The new version that is coming this fall, basically I'm calling it the Extreme Makeover Edition. You no longer have to do those credit-based questions, unless something's really wacky with your account. Some of us, like myself, have complicated last names, and sometimes the data doesn't match up with your credit history. Instead, we're moving towards biometric screening. Really, you're taking a picture of your driver's license and a selfie, and then you're done. Most of the other steps will look the same, and it's going to be pretty great. If you're in this room and you're panicking that you have to redo identity proofing, you don't stress. Just look forward to a better time for other people when this goes live. All right, so here's a couple of screenshots from our phones. It's going to look like this. It's a selected document. You're going to go get your license. You're going to take a picture of it. We don't know this person. This is a fake license that they give us to get through the process. And then it says, get ready to take a selfie. And you'll make sure you look really nice. This is what AI said Jerry Garcia would look like if he took a selfie. He's looking pretty good. This is early on in his life. You take the selfie, and then I think there's some verification in the background, and then you go back to the rest of the questions. That's it. You don't have to remember all that stuff about your loan or your mortgage. This is going to be pretty cool, and please don't panic that you have to redo this, because you don't. That's it for ePCS. Here comes Resend. This one, I'm so stoked. There is a lot of really cool stuff with this. Now, I've talked to some people this week that had no idea Resend exists. So we're going to start with the basics of how it works in production and then talk about some pain points, all of which we are addressing in the upcoming release. So I make the joke, you know how nobody has any of this stuff, and it's true. You guys live this. Dewey came up with this really great idea that when the pharmacy doesn't have Vyvanse, instead of you having to go find it, delete it, it's going to send that message to the pharmacy, then you have to create it again. What if we just had a resend button? So right now, you go to the bottom of the review and sign, to the bottom of the ribbon, you find that prescription, and all you have to do is hit resend. That button does a lot of stuff, and it sends a cancellation off to the pharmacy and helps you create a new prescription. And if you want to just change pharmacies, click that red pencil, pick the pharmacy that maybe has it in stock, and send it off. Everything gets updated in the chart, in ERX both, and in the EHR. Some people thought that button meant there was a problem. So they would see resend, and they say, oh no, I've done something wrong, and then they click it. And then it cancels the first one, sends a new one, and then the next prescription also says resend, and they're like, oh, I'm really doing something wrong. And we see this, and they go, resend, 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 and then that's when they call, and Nat says, oh, no, hold on. That's not how that works. You can also use resend to change something about that prescription. There's a lot going on with the patient in that room, and if you realize, oh, I meant to send a different strength, add some refills, change the quantity, you can use it that way as well. We got a question in the front.
So if I recall, if I recall, you have to be in the visit that you ordered it, correct?
I've got a surprise coming. Okay, great question. Another question, yes?
Oh, I was going to say, sometimes it doesn't show up there. Is that why? Because I'm not in the visit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, I got something cool coming. Everybody hold on to your hats. Let's see what else I wrote here. Oh, yes, it's only available for 7 days. And bear with me, I think that this largely makes sense. You're going to know if the patient and the pharmacy aren't able to get that in stock within a couple days. Otherwise, I feel like people might be going back to a prescription from 6 months and trying to resend it. You don't want to do that. You just want to write a fresh prescription. This is sort of that immediate term situation with the pharmacy. I know sometimes they don't show up to the pharmacy for a couple of days. So 7 days felt like enough time to do that. Okay, let's see what we've cooked up to solve some of these problems. Oh, the big one. Okay, this is pretty cool for the doctors, because they can send controlled substances. And this works for all drugs, right? But controlled substances are really the problem child in this scenario. So if you get the phone call, you can resend it to pharmacy number 2, but you're not getting those phone calls. It's the nursing staff, it's the triage crew. So they can resend legend drugs, easy peasy. But they can't send controlled substances in the first place, so they can't resend them either. So they're the ones getting the phone call, they're writing you a task, they're putting a sticky note on your door, they're finding you in the hallway, and you're like, oh, okay, don't worry, all that's gonna be fixed. So first up, just imagine that you have this phone note in Friendly Pharmacy, one of my favorite fake pharmacies. They don't have this stuff. Instead of having to write that manual task or go find you in the hallway, they can prepare this for you and put it on your queue so you can do the resending. Now, here's the answer to the first part. We're not taking it away from review and sign, but if you don't want to go searching around for that prescription to resend it, just go to prescription history, because that's the chart-wide version of all the prescriptions that have been sent. So you'll go to prescription history. This is you or the nurse, by the way. You're going to go to prescription history, click on that little plus, and the resend button will be there. That way, you don't have to go search for it. Now, in this scenario, the nurse is on the phone. They go to prescription history, they click resend, they click that pencil, pick a new pharmacy. Because they can't send it, they have to save it. Before they can save it, they're going to tell you what's going on. So they're going to write you a little note. It'll be real nice. They're going to hit save. And then it's going to show up on your queue, and it's going to tell you what's happening. And then you say, thank you for doing all that work, and you can send it to the pharmacy. Or hit the trash can if you're like, this is nonsense. We're not doing this anymore. So you don't have to complete this action if you don't want to. It will also be at the review and sign. If that's the place you like to hang out, please go do that. You don't have to worry about it, but it will be at the top of your queue in the pending stuff. How does this feel? Does this feel like we've answered some stuff? All right. When we show this off to the nurses on the drop-in call, they're like, thank God. You know, like it's driving them nuts too that they can't make some actions with this. That was a real zippy part of all this. Are there questions on anything that I've shown so far for the resend? Yes? Anyone that has the ability to get into ERX that's not just the front desk staff. The front desk staff typically has the non-clinical one, which is only like update the pharmacies. I think I have another slide here that I want to look at. Oh, yeah. With a resend, remember when I said they just hit resend a whole bunch of times, and then they're creating a little mess at the pharmacy? We're going to make it more obvious that the transmission of the prescription was successful, and it will say successfully sent. And that way you don't think that you've done something wrong, and that resend button's there. Additionally, if you hit resend out of curiosity, you will have to make a change before that resend button will be available to send that out. There may be cases where you truly want to resend it to the pharmacy because they said they didn't get it. So you're not trying to change it to a different pharmacy. You don't need to change something about it. That's fine. Pull this up, and you could just like go to the strength drop down, change it from 18 back to 27, something like that. If you truly need to just send it back to that pharmacy, you can get around that. But this is to prevent the majority of the people that were just hammering on that button. We have a question. Oh, Dassie's coming with the mic.
Oh, dear. Thank you. Is the thing that's different that they can write us a note saying what the problem is instead of having to create a new note?
So what was happening before
Because I feel
was
like
that...
we do all this already.
So the nursing staff, if it was amoxicillin and they didn't have it, they could take that phone call, resend amoxicillin to pharmacy number 2, no problem. It's the controlled substances. So when they pull it up, they can hit the resend button, but they can't send it and they can't save it. And so they're stuck, and they probably write you a sticky note or make you a task, and you have to go do the work.
Gotcha.
So now instead, they'll be able to easily find it in prescription history. They don't have to go digging around. And you don't either. You can find it from there if you want to. Then they will change something about it to kind of like finalize that resend, put in a reason for you to see, and that's what you'll see on the queue. So there's no way for them to like save it and queue it up for you previously.
They still saved it. Anyway,
You've seen them save it?
yeah,
Oh,
because we have our MAs actually tee up all our meds, and I have a snap text that.
I
has
see
all-
where you're going with this. They can prepare and send lots of stuff. They do it all the time, but they can't do it when they want to use this resend button, they're not able to. That's what it is. So they probably, right, what they might be doing is getting that phone call. They're deleting the one you sent and preparing a new one. They're having to work harder. That's probably what's happening.
Okay.
So you'll tell them they don't have to do that dance anymore. Just hit resend, tell you why, and then hit send, or save, not send.
Gotcha. And then just advocate for, if you guys aren't doing that, it changed our lives. Like,
The resend
we
button?
write the the snap texts that if they want an ADHD refill, they have to go through the chart and find the answers to all the things that we have been going through the chart to find. Like, when was their med recheck? When did we want to see them back? What was the medication change, if any?
Yeah.
And we have the same thing for albuterol, for asthma, like, so we don't just have to go through the whole chart, last steroids, last ER, you know.
Okay, yeah.
And then they tee it all up, they send us a note, it's a snap text, like I said, that, oh yeah, I review all this looks good, and then it's in review and sign, and we just sign it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Are they leaving you that note in the EHR side, like in the, like where are they leaving you all that?
It's in a
that work
phone
that
note.
they did? It's in the
Yeah,
phone note. Okay,
yeah.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they get we don't get any of the requests until they're already, like,
Okay.
ready for us.
Yeah,
So
they're
if
really
you're
doing the
not-
triaging of it. Yeah.
It took, like, I can't tell you how much pushing, and I don't feel comfortable, and what if, we send that you're not sending anything? It's
Right.
still on me,
Yeah,
know?
they're doing all
So
that prep work and saving you some time.
If
Yeah.
you guys aren't doing it, I'm happy to talk to anybody, but.
Yeah, I love
that's
it.
huge.
We got a question right behind you.
We've done that, but we've also put those questions for the parents about that on the portal message for ADHD refills that they have to fill in. How
Yeah.
are their grades in school? How are they eating? How are they sleeping? All on the request. And then the nurse can fill in those last ADD visit. Are they getting their prescriptions routinely? And then send that whole message to us, and then send the prescription.
These are great ideas.
It's worked out great.
I love the sharing and
Right,
caring.
but
This
if,
is, yeah,
But if they don't use the portal, we just go back to the message, like we usually did.
very cool.
Ask all those questions.
I'm going to pause now. I wonder if Sarah's got some thoughts from the chat. Anything coming from our friends at home? Nothing yet. All right, let's see. So I think that was, let me look. Okay, yes, that was the end of what I had prepared for recent. Any other thoughts on this one? Yes? Oh, that's a great question, Dustin. Yes. The question was, will that successfully sent little information there in the green show up just for resends? It will be for everything. So this is not a super known part about PCC ERX. Where it says sent, where it says sent 620, 1608, that was red text is into production anyway. It is today. You can hover over it, and there's like a little history of what happened. It'll say who prepped it, who sent it, and then it says verified, delivered to the pharmacy. So that's a great piece of sneaky information you can use when they say they didn't get it. They did. They probably deleted it. That happened all the time when I worked in pharmacies. Oh, we got a question up front.
Just a general question about nurses sending medicines.
Yeah.
If nurses send a medication and it gets assigned to you, but it was really supposed to get assigned to another doctor, is there a way as the doctor that you can reassign it to your colleague? I always ask my nurse, can you reassign it to whoever my
Okay.
colleague is that it really belongs to?
So you can reassign renewal requests, but there isn't any way on the pending prescription for you to change it to a different person. So you would, that's a really interesting wish that we'd be able to do that. Jen will probably write that one down. Yeah. We're going to talk about 3-month supplies for a little bit. Any other thoughts on this one? Or anything, just let it out. All right, 3-month supplies, and you might be thinking, well, hey, what about resending for 3-month supplies? That's the first slide that I'm going to talk about. You can resend 3-month supplies today, but you got to send all 3 of them to the next pharmacy, and that, may not make any sense, and you may not know there's trouble in town until prescription number 2 comes around, and right now you can't do anything with that. And then you're like deleting it, and that loses the evidence of the first one, and it just makes things messy. All of that is about to change. So Don't forget, if you really want to resend the whole trio straight up within the first couple days, just do it. Don't stress about it. But what if we get 30 days into the future? You were stuck right now. In the 10-4 release this fall, you'll go to prescription history because it's going to be the easier place to find these. Click on resend and you'll see all 3 of those dates. And these examples are a little bit tough because I took a screenshot of these around 6:30, but you would imagine that we're past 7 days after 6:30. So that top one would say, you can't resend it because it's already 7 days in the past. But you could choose anytime between now and 7 days after those 2 dates, you could send those to a different pharmacy. So you might just find out from the staff, they're like, CVS has no drugs in stock. And you could say, oh, okay, I'm just going to go resend these. Or you can wait till you get the phone call and you can resend them. You could just send one away. Think about those college kids. We're going to talk about 2-month supply in a minute, but those college kids during the summer, you don't even know where they're going to be. And so maybe resending one of those to a different pharmacy might make sense. Dewey has so many different computations about how this and another feature we're going to talk about could be used. I think if you've been struggling with where the 3-month supplies are going or how to delete them or like, oh, the pharmacy gets it and they delete it, don't stress about that anymore because there's a lot of different things you can do with the new release. So you'll be able to resend within that 3-month supply and do some flexibility. I keep saying change it to a different pharmacy, but you can resend for any reason. You really could be changing the strength, things like that. Not refills on these. You get the idea. All right. We're working on the name a little bit. It might be send now or send later. It might be send and pend. But the point of this new feature is sort of to combat what's happening with these 3-month supplies. It looks like one prescription when you write it. And when it gets to the pharmacy, it is 3 individual prescriptions. And one's today's date, and the next 2 are 30 and 60 days out from there. The pharmacy is probably processing the first one. That feels good. And then they're like, this looks just like the one you just sent. It's not. The date's different, but maybe they don't appreciate that. They hit delete. And they're like, another one, delete. Or they call you and say, you can't do that. And that's not true. Maybe they don't want to put them on hold, or they don't want to be the ones interacting with the patient because then they're responsible for the patient calling them to fill it. If you've been having great success with 3-month supplies and all of this is like, I never run into this, don't worry about it. You don't have to take advantage of what's coming, but this is for those of you that are suffering a little bit. There's going to be a point-in-time way to configure this as well as a configuration panel to sort of set yourself up for the same experience every time. Right now, the experience that you're having today is what's on the left-hand side of the screen. So if you like sending all 3 of them at the same time and you don't want to change that, don't do anything. Just leave that box unchecked. If you want to decide every time what the vibe is. If you're like, that pharmacy never has these, so every time it's this Walgreens, I want to send the first one and save the second 2, you can do that. Or maybe something about this specific patient makes sense and you want to just decide. You can configure this on the fly for each individual patient every time. And again, if you don't want to change the functionality, just leave it as is. What this will do is allow you to send one right now, and then in 30 days, there's a configuration I'll show you, but at a base level, imagine in 30 days, this will pop back up on your queue and it'll say, hey, you prepped this 30 days ago, do you still want to send it? And you'll be able to send it at that point. And then here comes 60 days, the same thing will happen. The question I got in the hallway all week, can't you just do it for me? I signed my password, just send it again in a month and then in 2 months. We can't do that, guys. The man does not like that. You still have to log in and put in your secret password, but it also gives you an opportunity to review it and make sure it makes sense, because what if the strength change or the situation change? So let me show you a couple more things and then we can reflect on what we're building. If you are thinking in this class, this is awesome, don't make me check that box every time, you can do that. You go into my settings and you just say, always prep that. And then you could uncheck it if it doesn't make sense, right? Either leave it and it will do what it does today. You could pre-check it in the configuration panel such that that box is always checked and it will always send and pend, or you can kind of decide, on the fly. Let's see, this will be a per provider setting. Your nursing staff can't send them, right? So this isn't anything that they're gonna need to worry about. If you opt to send it later, it is gonna show up on your queue. I'll show you that. And you do have to put in your password every time. Now, you might imagine that sometimes you want to send the prescription a little bit early because who knows if they have it, the patient might be running out, they might need to leave town. You could have this configured to any number of days to show up on the queue before that fill date's supposed to happen. And I know this is a lot to unpack, but if the prescription is due to be filled on August 1st, you could set it up so that it shows up 5 days before that, so you've got the time to catch up on those prescriptions and send it off if it makes sense. Does that, yeah, okay. I knew we'd have some questions on this one. Here comes Darcy.
Not quite the same, but there's an error that comes up
Oh, I know.
when you prescribe more than 90 days at once. But you're technically not prescribing more than 90 days at once because the first prescription's already expired and they've already filled it. But say you need to fill that fourth prescription, but you're actually only adding one more on top of the 2 that are pending, and it won't let you do it.
I'll tell you why. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but legally, I think you can.
so within a single encounter, you can't send more than 90 days worth of, and it has to be very specific. It has to be Adderall XR5. You can't do more than 90 days. That's a DEA restriction that we are tested on when we have to recertify. If you are running into a situation like that, you might still be in the same encounter you wrote it, which is an interesting thing. You might have been going back to the chart to review what happened. Just open a new encounter. And so open a phone note, something like that. That will get around that, which is kind of funny that the DEA isn't noticing that you're doing it in a different encounter. What might be happening is situations where instead of using the resend button, you went back to that encounter and you're trying to send it somewhere else. It's calculating that again, so it could be something like that too. So just be on the lookout. Those are guidelines that we are required to enforce, and so take a look at that and just know you can always switch the encounter if you need to. Oh, Darcy's coming back. We got. We were like, maybe we should get 2 microphones, and they're like, we don't have any.
You can just talk loudly.
Yeah. Oh yes.
What if you want to have the option to do both? Like sometimes you want to send them all immediately, but maybe for another patient you want to send the first one.
So in your example, you might want to not configure it in my settings and just leave it as option number 1 on the left. And then in the cases where you want to send it, we tried to like over customize it that you could kind of be really flexible with it. You might want to try it out and see what it feels like and then change it. The good news is this is your party. So you can do it different than your colleagues at the office if you don't agree on how to do it. That's right. You are individuals and you can decide what you want to do. Okay, let me show you what it's going to look like. So we looked at the configuration on the fly and in my settings. And then remember when I was like 30 days later, here it is. And so the time has expired as far as it's time. For month number 2, this is going to pop up on your queue under pending prescriptions. I likened it to a renewal request, and I think that may have been confusing. It's not going to be in your renewals. You don't have to go over there. This is your pending prescriptions. This will be prioritized above all the other pending prescriptions. This is time to send this out. So your queue counter will go up, take a peek at it, see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, hit that trash can. You want to change something about it, hit the pencil. All that stuff is eligible. Here comes, Darcy's coming back with the microphone. No, no, that's what this is for.
So what if you're on vacation and someone else doesn't have your list up on their queue?
Well, that would be, you could, in your configuration panel, set it to show up 5 days early. I wouldn't want you worrying about this on your vacation. That's the thing. You might have to think about it. Or tell your friends, watch my queue. And that, you could say I use the pendants end and I want to have you take a look for it. Questions on this? Is anybody excited? Does this make sense so far? It's a lot to kind of discuss, like with screenshots. Yeah.
Will they show up on your phone when you're?
They will show up on your phone. Yep. Yeah, that's right. If you are on vacation, bring your hard token. Start putting it on your packing list. It's everyone's favorite thing to bring on vacation. Yeah, your colleagues back home will have their own hard token, and because they can use their Authy if they're at the office, right? So you could say, just watch out for my stuff. What I heard in the hallway a little bit this week was, we're going to talk about the 2-month supplies, but this might be a good solution for the summertime stuff. They're letting the kids be free, man. They don't need to be on these drugs. And so you may not need to send them as much. You might want to space it out. Just do 2 months or kind of, parse it out a little bit. Here's some other things that you couldn't do before with 3-month supplies. As I mentioned before, if suddenly halfway through that treatment, you committed to 90 days, right? But then something changed and you don't want to do that anymore. You weren't able to really work with month 2 and month 3. You were kind of stuck with it. So Now from prescription history, find that 3-month supply, hit details. In this example, maybe you've got pending prescriptions because you liked that new feature. You could send those ahead of time. If you were going on vacation, maybe you go look and see what you had pending. You could send those ahead of time. You could cancel them completely. Even if you don't use the pend and send and you have a 3-month supply that you want to work with and delete individually, you can do that from details. So we're going to let you have sort of full coverage on configuring these and working with these where you couldn't have those before. And I know that this is a lot that I'm throwing at you right now. Questions on this one? Do you guys find yourself wishing that you could delete month 2 and month 3 or just get rid of it? All right, we're getting some head nods. I feel like Dr. Diazzo has something brewing. Did you hear the jets? I was thinking of you when the jets flew over. You were like, that's why you flew here, just in case. All right, let's see what we got coming next. Oh, 2-month supplies. The first time someone asked me, and I kind of was like, well, that's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about that. And then lots of people have come up to me this week and said they were excited about this. So here you go. We would not let you delete date number 3 before, and now you can. So it's just that simple, especially in the summertime if you don't want to send all 3 and commit to that. You don't know where they're going to be in a couple months. You don't know who's going to have stuff in stock. You'll be able to send just month 1 and 2, delete number 3, and that's it. And you'll see that reflected in prescription history, so you'll know that you only sent 2 months for those. There's more stuff coming. This is when we're going to talk about Concerta, so you guys get ready for that. Any thoughts about 3-month supply before we move on? All right, Sarah, any questions from the internet? No? All right, wonderful. Okay. I know Concerta has been weighing you down. It weighs me down, keeps me up at night. Some of you may not have had any issues, and I say Concerta, but we're really talking about the generic Concerta problem with the methylphenidate ERs. Oh, we have a question now. We'll come back to this.
We
I
have
think.
an ad lib from Dewey that I want to
yes,
share.
I've been waiting. Yes, I've been waiting. Dewey's been working so hard on this
Yeah,
stuff.
Dewey's been affirming what you've been saying
Yes.
in the chat. But he gives the tip that you can save a favorite as a 2-month supply as well.
Yeah.
So if this is something you typically or commonly want to do and you don't want to have to delete that 3rd date to fill each time, consider making it a favorite.
That is a great suggestion. I knew we'd hear from Dewey at some point. Thank you, Dewey. Not yet, yes. I will give you some small optional homework in a little bit that you can start now if you want, but that one you'll have to wait for. So if you've not been having issues with generic Concerta with these methylphenidates, you can leave everything that I'm about to talk about. You can leave it as is, but I hear that this is a pretty across-the-board issue. Not all generic Concerta tablets are created equal. The FDA rates generics. When the patent expires, here comes the FDA, and they're rating all these different generics. For generic Concerta, for the methylphenidate ER, we're talking about 18s and 27s, right? We're not talking about the 10s. There are 8 AB-rated NDCs. Those ones are cool. They have the osmotic pump. And then there's 2, I don't know who's making them. Well, actually, I do, but they don't have the osmotic pump. And those ones are not created therapeutically equivalent. So the problem number 1 we discovered several months ago is that the NDC that our system is picking is one of the BX-rated ones. So you might say, okay, can't they just switch it? Well, yeah. So the NDC that we send in all cases and going forward is a representative NDC. So the drug name's going to go over, and the NDC is there as like a verification if they need it. Most times they don't, because you and I don't know what NDCs they have in stocks. That's why it's a representative. It just goes to the pharmacy, and they do with it what they need to. The problem is, with Concerta and the authorized generic went off the market, then they were like, they're eagle eyes. They're like, well, which one do you want? And it doesn't help that we're sending the BX-rated one. They can't upgrade to one of the good ones with the osmotic pump. Some people know what you mean, and they know you, and they trust you. They say, I know what he meant. I'll just use that. But some people are really sticking to the rules. That's why they're calling. They might say, can't you just send the osmotic one? And you say, I would if I could. There's nothing in there. Or they might say, if you can't figure it out, just send the Trigen one. Same problem. You can't pick between NDCs in the system. All of that's about to change. Part of the other problem is this is methylphenidate ER18 tablet, comma, extended release. We say it twice, and then it says 24 hours. And these ones don't last 24 hours, but it's a differentiator from the other methylphenidate ERs. I'll show you a cheat sheet about what all these are momentarily. So we're going to help you change the name. Dewey and I came up with something that you can use as an option. And we're going to show you what NDC we're sending. We're going to send one of the AB ones. so that when they get it, if they choose to look at the NDC, they can switch between some of the other AB-rated ones with the osmotic pump. Is this making sense so far? There's a lot. I know it's just like, it might at the end. This is a lot to unpack. With the new release, you'll have these options that happen, and this will be for every drug, so we're going to look at one other one after this. The name that will be in there by default will be what I'm showing here at the top. It'll just say ER18 with a nod that you're looking for that osmotic pump. You can still go back to the ones that we were using before, and you can pick for some other ones that are in there. And here comes Relexi, right? And it's the same thing, but a couple different strengths, and that adds some additional complexity here. If the name change and the AB-rated NDC isn't solving your problem, and they still say, no, you need to send Trigen, you can do that. You can come in here and look and pick out the NDC that they're asking for. So if you're not having problems, don't change anything. Just let it ride. If you want to pick one of these other names, you can do that. And if you want to specify what NDC you're using, you have that flexibility as well. Dewey and I spent a long time working on this and pondering stuff. If this isn't solving your problems, please don't suffer. Please give us a call because we want to get back to the drawing board about this. I want to pause and talk about Concerta a little bit if there's questions, and then I'll show you some other examples. Sarah's got one.
I have a question that's
Yes.
more of a clarification. Will it remember your selection the
It
next
will.
time you prescribe?
Yes, great question. That is something I neglected to say. You're going to configure this once and leave it until next time you want to tinker with it. So this will be just your account, and it will be sticky for the next time. I'm super pumped about this. I've spent way too much time looking at all these different NDCs and nomenclature changes. This only applies to outbound prescriptions. So if you're like, thank goodness it's going to say methylphenidate ER, it's not going to affect all the other places that you see these. And if you've been hyper-focused on these, you'll notice that there is slight differences to the name depending on what area of ERX you're looking at. Dewey and I know we've got a lot on our roadmap, EPA, stuff like that, but we do want to take a look and maybe make these a little more consistent. And we got some questions up front.
Quick question. So for the ER18 extended release 24, if you stick with that, will it still be that BX rated
No,
NDC?
it will be the AB one.
Okay. And so is it possible when I prescribe this now in 10.4 that my patient will actually get a different medication than what they got before? And they may say, well, I liked the other one before.
You could, yes, in those cases, you could use resend and pick the BX NDC from below.
Okay.
So that's an interesting question. You could start having that conversation. They're not going to know about all this stuff,
They
but you
may.
could say, hey, what NDC? Do you know what NDC that's filled with? Because that will be on the
Sure.
label.
I mean, it might be a pink versus a purple pill. And they're like, oh, it's
Right,
be a
right. So
purple
then you
pill.
could use, there is an identification. That was part of the game on Tuesday that I forgot to tell people. There is a drug identifier in PCC ERX. I don't think it gets used a lot. So you could say, hey, bring your stuff in. I want to take a look. And then my email is morgan@pcc.com. So you can hit me up at any time and I'll help you sort through this. I think we have a bunch of different thoughts and questions up front.
We run into this with the generic albuterol inhaler.
Oh, well, yeah, yep. So obviously, I'm really excited to be putting some stuff out here that should help with Concerta. This NDC change and all the different nomenclature options, this is for every drug in the database. So before you leave today, if you're like, man, I really wish I could see what's going to happen with this drug, come see me. I can show you what the options are. I want to be clear, the only experience that will change is for Concerta. The rest of the drugs are going to stay exactly the same way that they are today, but you'll have the option to tinker if you want. I know you guys like to tinker. Oh, Darcy. She's getting in her steps. This is fun. You can start. We'll fill in the gap.
So what is the difference between the NDCs?
So the 8 that are AB rated have a specific delivery system that is an osmotic pump, and the way it comes out, I know, and so you're like, I had no idea. I've had other doctors say the same thing. The other 2 are extended release, but the way it comes out is not the same, and this could explain why the patients are saying, the one that the pharmacy gave me last month isn't working, or it doesn't feel the same. And so that's what, I'll tell you a quick story, and I said I wasn't gonna get into this stuff. When Concerta's patent expired, there became an authorized generic, and that's the special anointed, like there's a hat on this generic. It was the same stuff. And so Janssen and Patriot Pharmaceuticals, it's like probably in the same building, and they would put 30 in one bottle and 30 in the other. They had the exact same markings on the bottles, so the authorized generic that the insurance was paying for was all from the same manufacturer. And when that manufacturer went out of business, which is funny, because Concerta is still being made, then that's when all these other drug manufacturers started making it, and some of them kept up to date with the way that the original release mechanism is. I've got all sorts of stuff. I'll send it to you if you want to take a peek and learn more about. I know. One thing I neglected to say is all of this data that we give to you comes from First Data Bank. So this isn't stuff that Dewey and I typically make up. We have a whole team of people that provide this data, and Dewey challenged this to them and said, these aren't the same, and they were like, you know, and so he's like, fine, we're gonna figure this out on our own. So.
There definitely are, like, articles to read.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with this.
Anecdotally, I have a patient who
Yeah.
only can do well on one, but we switched to the other because our insurance, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that this was going to do it, and it was a disaster. So
Yeah.
we went back to the other one, but pharmacy didn't even know what we were talking about, which was a little concerning.
Well, that's what I think. Sometimes it's they don't know the.
They literally don't.
Yeah.
And it comes down to, and we don't know what the pill
Yeah.
prescription is. And so, it's definitely worth reading up on because it's something I didn't know
Yeah.
for years. But
I think we didn't have to pay attention until the authorized generic went off the market, and then, yeah. Oh, we got more. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah. It's just like, what in the world? We have a surprise doctor that says, wait a minute, there's a pill identifier in ERX, and there is. Yeah, I can show you at the end. I'll have to get logged in to a system. Craziness, huh? This was if everyone came on Tuesday. So, this is, okay, Dr. Giazio knew, right? You didn't know? Okay, wait a minute. Dr. Giazio's been using this since 2017. Okay, hold up, everybody. Does anybody ever use the pill identifier that's in this? Okay, all right, we got two superstars in front. I'll show you. On Tuesday, I did these two silly little games, and they were a bunch of they were legit bad handwritten prescriptions from doctors, and then there was like, guess these drugs, and one of them was Concerta, and because I was buzzing around, I didn't really get to tell you. Part of the game was to show you that handwritten prescriptions, not a great idea. Use PCC ERX, and the other one was like, if you didn't know, you could have looked this up in your EHR. Okay, so look at birth control. You know how that first entry kind of stinks, right? And I know all that stuff's in there. It's not a lie, but nobody really knows what all that stuff is. Instead, you, on your own personal account, can go in and say, well, I liked you now. And that's what your prescriptions will say going forward. You could pull up loratadine, and if the patient, you're sending them to Walgreens, and you really wanted to say Walgreens brand loratadine, you can pick that. Think about all the diapers and the spacers and the albuterols. If you like this stuff, you're going to need a whole day because just imagine the combinations. Yes?
So the wish is it would be great to call it Junel or Loestrin, but it'd be nice to have in parentheses the generic. So what pushes over to the pharmacy? Just the NDC that means to them norethindrone, 1 milligram, blah, blah, blah? Or what? I guess I can't really resolve that. It's the norethindrone that's coming over. Like I
yeah,
can't
that's
tell on your
Loestrin
slide.
FE, yeah. So right now, today in production, it shows what's at the top. It would be that whole long thing,
Right,
and it would
right.
say in parentheses Loestrin FE.
Okay.
And then you're at the mercy of whatever branded generic they have
Right.
at the office or at the pharmacy. So now, if you know regionally in your area that everybody gets from McKesson this one, so
Right.
you could pick that instead. So what's going over right now is a generic NDC that's meant to be representative, and they can be flexible with it.
And the change in the future, the thing that we'll go over is Junel parentheses norethindrone.
Yes, if you pick it. Yeah, you'd have to go
Right.
in and pick it, yeah. This is going to be so cool. Think about like Ritalin LA and Metadate CD and all that stuff that's really confusing, and you're getting pushback because of the name that we're sending is adding confusion. That's obviously not good. We have and I'll mention this at the end, we have an ERX drop-in after lunch. If you want to take a sneaky peek at some of this stuff, if you want to tell me your drug name, come hang out. Oh, but there's more. We're still talking about the future stuff, guys. SnapText is coming inside PCC ERX. You probably don't have a prednisone 10 taper set up, but this is the homework that you can do today. You can set it up in the EHR panel such that when 10.4 goes live in the fall, you can start using those tapers. So if there's stuff that you're manually typing out all the time, or you're copying and pasting from some spreadsheet about these sets of directions, think about the printed prescriptions that you use for speech therapy and occupational therapy. If you're writing up a little paragraph, just make a snap text. You could, if you're not familiar with snap text, you're setting that up inside the EHR, but you can have personal ones and practice-wide ones if you have the permission set up, so you could create some defaults and tell people about it. And then if you said, well, I don't even know what I have in there, don't worry about it. You're gonna come in to the point of prescribing and just start searching your snap text. And so if you think it's prednisone, just start typing pred, and you'll see the results that come in here. So what's really interesting, the question was, is it gonna be EHR wide? And we got this idea, well, we were already gonna do snap text. Then we got the idea about the searching from a recent ERX drop-in. And then Sarah's on top of this, and she's like, wait a minute. They're doing this in the same release in the EHR, and everyone cheered. And so in the EHR, you'll also be able to search. Theirs looks a little bit different because ours is a web app and theirs is not, so there'll be a little bit of difference. But if you've ever struggled to want to know what your snap texts are, don't worry. Snap text for everybody. I know. The snap text information will only be available in, I think, 6 spots, but it's the obvious ones that you'll want to use: instructions to patient, comments to pharmacy, the internal note. So you could be having people, that's why I asked where they were putting the notes for you. They could put them in the internal notes. Responses for refills, safety checking overrides. If you find yourself typing out the same darn thing every time, make a snappy text. Just do it that way. A little snappy snap, you know, nice and easy. And then when EPA comes, you'll be able to have snap text for responses for that kind of stuff. So we are super pumped about this one. There's more. Let me see. Oh, I didn't tell you guys about this one. Real-time prescription results. It's really great information, but sometimes you're like, man, that's a lot, and I really just want those fields that are right underneath it, like the instructions to patient and indication, start and stop dates. Today, in production, you can click, I call it a flippy triangle. There's a little triangle there. You can click it, and it'll shrink it up. Maybe you didn't know that. If you want, going forward, you can just have it be pre-shrunk all the time. And then you expand it if you care, because sometimes the results are great, and you don't need to look at the alternatives. Think about prescribing on your phone. If you are writing something that tends to have a lot of alternates, it's taking up all that space on your phone, and then you kind of miss the point, you know, when you're scrolling around. So you can set it to be collapsed ahead of time so that it looks like the example on the left, and then you could expand it if you need to. We'll talk in a little bit about the real-time prescription results if that's totally new. Ooh, here we come.
Not a question, just a tip for everybody, because this was like revelatory to my entire partnership when I figured this out. I hope everybody knows when you said that, you can resize that box when you're writing instructions to the patient.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that
Yeah,
was
like
a
in the little
big
corner, like
thing.
drag it down, yeah.
Nobody knew that, so if you don't know that, oh my God.
Next year, I'm going to have you guys teach the tips and tricks. This is great. This saves me time. All right. Oh, you might have picked up on this. If you are someone that goes into my settings a lot, one of my earlier screenshots spilled the beans, but we did a redesign of the My Settings page. We keep adding new configuration stuff, and Dewey finally said, this needs a makeover. So it will look cooler. It does not look like this today, and it will look a little bit prettier going forward. The last one is, Dewey calls it his error crusade. Dewey hates errors because he knows it bothers you guys and it clogs up the logs, all sorts of stuff. We were seeing a number of errors that were drug specific. Now, I should clarify that when you see that error that says medication incomplete, please select dose form, that error is supposed to be there if you truly forgot to add the dose form. But what you're probably saying is, no, I looked and it's there and I'm still seeing this message and I can't get past it. That is oftentimes a drug-specific issue, like these lidocaine patches, and seemingly nothing that you do lets you process this. I think this was specifically the over-the-counter 4% one. We cleared up a bunch of drug-specific ones. They're not listed here in the new release. So when 10.4 comes out, if you still see this message and you've done your due diligence and you've looked and that dose form is filled out, take a screenshot and give us a call because we can put that on the list to fix. I'm not sure if I took the screenshot out later in the tips and tricks because I knew I was going to have too much to talk about. You can get around that a lot of times by clicking on instruction only, and that will remove sort of part of that check where it's looking for that codified dose form. That should get you around it. Yes?
Just want to let you know, it comes up for that nasal epinephrine, Neffy.
Does it come up for Neffy?
Yeah,
For the new strength or the original?
One of the doses doesn't quite
Okay.
come up, so.
Jen, will you write that one down? Neffy is a troublemaker. Okay, Neffy was on the list to talk about, but not in that capacity. Really? Okay. All right, so Neffy needs some love, is what you're trying to tell me. Okay. I was excited to tell you that the lower strength was now available, but sounds like there's trouble on the horizon anyway. So there's other stuff that we try to take a look at, and these are more transmission-based prescriptions. So you didn't do anything wrong, but the prescription can't reach the pharmacy through SureScript, something like that. We've made some changes there. But really, we want to limit the number of errors, and the error messaging will be a little bit more clear on the RX task queue when you do get some. I think that's it for what's coming new in 10.4. It's a lot of stuff. This is the groovy stuff. This is what we've been working on, and then we will be getting back to EPA. Questions on anything that I've covered so far? Or questions in the chat? Okay. Real quick, we're going to look at the popular wishes and enhancement requests. This is an acknowledgement that we know these things are important, so you can give a hoot and holler for stuff, or you can say, I don't care about that. That's fine too. We got EPA coming up. We know that one really popular. Integrating your state-specific PDMP. We know you all have to do this, and it's a pain in the you-know-what. You have to log in there and do a dance. The wish here would be so that you don't even have to leave the chart to do that. So maybe it's pulling information in, or it's pushing it here. The pharmacists have to do stuff with it too. So stay tuned on that one. The ability to mark medications as confidential, that's big. There's a lot of stuff when they get in the teens that they're not sure they want their parents to know about, and that's okay. So figuring out something for that. This one was a popular wish for a little while, and I don't know if people are still pondering this one. We'd made a change maybe last year, and you might be on board with this when you think about eye drops and eardrops. Previously, it was calculating the straight number of mLs needed, and eye drops and eardrops, they're not going to squirt some out and give you a fresh bottle. They're giving you the whole bottle. So we made a change that it would calculate and put it to I don't know if that's like the Price is Right rules. Like you're not going to go over like what's, or you wouldn't go under. Just ignore me. That didn't make sense. So you would have like the eye drops or eardrops. It's the first up package size for that. With amoxicillin and some of the other reconstitutable antibiotics, there was a lot of feedback that said, well, I don't want them to have more. And that's when I'd say, I think they're giving it to them anyway. That's what would happen in the pharmacies I worked in. If you ordered 80 mLs and it only comes in 50, we're mixing up 250s and we're get 2 single 50s, not 250, and giving them both. They're going to spill some. It's sticky. We're not pouring out the other 20 because no one can use it unless the prescription comes in later that day for exactly that amount. So they probably were already giving your patient a little bit more, and at the end of the label it says, please dispose of after 7 days, 10 days. So that change had made it so you would have to stop worrying about it, but then some people said, no, I don't really like that. So is anybody feeling like they don't love that auto package assignment? People are all right with it now. Okay, we're going to take it off the prioritized list for right now, probably. This one I've been hearing about a lot. You're halfway through writing a prescription and you get interrupted. And you just go back to the regular chart and you don't realize you didn't finish that prescription. I'm getting lots of head nods, okay. Or maybe you did save it, but you didn't send it. Maybe when you leave the chart, the computer says, hey, are you done? It doesn't look like it, and maybe stop you from that situation, okay. The ability to document handwritten prescriptions in PCC ERX, we can't do that necessarily today, and hopefully that's not happening a lot, but there's not a great way to document those. You get a lot of safety checking alerts, and wouldn't it be nice if for a specific patient, for whatever condition is going on, or duplicate therapy, stuff like that, that maybe you could suppress it for a year, or just say, I don't want to be alerted about this specific combination of things. And then right when Pocket PCC came out, there were a lot of wishes about those filters. That's kind of why I covered that earlier, but I think people have seemed to figure out how that works and aren't really worried about it too much. There's lots of other wishes that are out there, but this is kind of what's on our next up list. But that could be, it's a while. Like I said, EPA is going to take a big amount of stuff. You're allowed to wish a couple wishes now if you want. Is that what you're doing?
I'm wishing it, but I want to know maybe there's a solution.
Oh, sure.
Every time that we have to prescribe like AFOs
Mm-hmm.
or any durable medical equipment, I spend 20 minutes trying to figure out how to do it. Like,
Okay.
say we completed
Okay.
To send it to a pharmacy, even though you really want to send it to a specific number.
Okay.
Because, yeah.
Come see me at the drop-in. We'll get you straightened out. If you're struggling with DMEs or other supplies, there's a configuration panel. You can set that up that overrides the NDC restriction, because SureScripts need NDCs to leave the building. None of that stuff you don't have to stress about. We will get that fixed up. Yeah, we got a wish up front or a comment.
I just have something cool that we use that I thought would be helpful, and I don't think it's very commonly known, and that's the custom search term.
We're going to talk about those. Yeah. She was noting that they use something that I think a lot of people don't use in their custom search terms, and that makes things a lot easier to find. So that's in the tips and tricks section. All right. So the title of this whole course was, Are You Prescribing? Like It's 2025. And it was more of an idea of like what's coming up next, but what about like the in case you missed it sort of stuff? You're very busy people. You're not necessarily reading the learned documentation that's coming out. So is there stuff that you didn't even know about that was happening? And then we'll talk about personal tips and tricks, and then practice-wide stuff. We've got plenty to go. We're probably not going to get through all of it, and that is okay. Real-time prescription benefit. This came out in the last couple years. I feel like people are really using this, and I would like to know if you're struggling with it at all. This information is not anything that PCC provides. We show it to you, but it's not information that we have. Based on your patient and their identifiers about their demographics, it reaches out to SureScripts, not the insurance information in the EHR. Those are totally different, and that's going to make you go, what? It reaches out to SureScripts, and it says, hey, we know this patient. Here's some information about them, and this is for this specific patient and their insurance, like down to their granular insurance plan, and then the medication that you're looking to prescribe, and it's going to provide that information. So if you said, hey, this doesn't match the insurance plan that I have on file, we know it's not intended to. This is using the SureScripts data. I think we've got a question or comment in the back.
Yeah, sometimes
Oh, he's loud. We got it.
sometimes I put in a prescription and it says this is not covered, and it gives me a list. And the first thing in the list looks exactly the same. And I go, well, that's exactly the same, but okay, I'll select it. And I select it, and it tells me that's not covered.
Okay, I got the almost verbatim, almost the question was, so sometimes I prescribe it, like maybe you prescribe this Vyvanse, and this is not covered, but then down the first option is also Vyvanse, and you say, all right, and then you click it, and then it says, good job, still not covered. I had almost the same exact conversation the other day. I haven't heard of this until today. I would love to look at it. Do you have a sense of, and you don't have to know, a certain insurance company or certain drugs that you're seeing this more often than, is it inhalers? Because I feel like inhalers are causing, Okay. We have a couple offices that they're reporting it says that it's going to be covered, and then it gets to the pharmacy for the inhalers, and it says PA needed, and it's disrupting their practice a lot. If it feels like I'm getting head nods about the inhalers, maybe there's something that's going on. Yes?
One thing I've noticed is if you have the day's supply filled in, it will be covered. If you erase that 30-day supply, it then says it's not covered.
Okay.
I don't understand how that.
The comment has to do with the day supply. The day supply is one of the critical pieces for the insurance to validate whether it'll be covered or not. I remember this vividly, that Blue Cross Blue Shield will only cover up to 34 days. Why 34? That doesn't even make any sense. And so there's all sorts of stuff that is a piece of data that we have to send to the to SureScripts for the PBMs to get that response back. Sarah's probably got some thoughts from the chat.
So just a tip from Dewey that if you're reporting an issue with this, which we definitely do want to know about and look into, it would be really great if you can give us a specific patient, the date of service that you were trying to prescribe, and that will let us research it much more easily for you. So those two pieces of information, the patient name and the date of service of writing the prescription.
Yeah, please don't keep these to yourselves. Just tell us you're not bothering us. We are challenging each one of these discrepancies with SureScripts, who is reaching out to the pharmacy benefit managers, and that's where it goes into this black hole. But you're going to keep up with it. I think there's a difference in the results depending on what you're using for the dose form. So if you're saying one inhaler versus the package that they prefer, that could be contributing to it. What I don't want is for you to feel like you can't trust it, and it sounds like the inhalers are driving people crazy. Yeah.
I found that one
Okay.
that patient's plan, it will come up as not covered. Once I
Yep.
pick the right pharmacy, then it'll come up as covered. So it's been very helpful for that.
Okay, the comment had to do with, sometimes it is the pharmacy, and you're absolutely right that the pharmacy is part of the adjudication that we're finding out about, and there are some pharmacies that simply don't work with certain insurance plans, but how would you pick up on it, right? You start to see the trends.
Do you get enough data that you could send that back as a message, pharmacy not in plan?
I thought that we did, and that's what, this is the part where if Dewey was sitting here, he would have all sorts of good stuff to say about this. There's like hovers, and these are all screenshots, right? But in those, the blue text and the green text, a lot of times there's hovers, and you can kind of check out some information in there. So I think that it does say pharmacy is not in or not in network.
The red text with the little exclamation point, and it tells you it's the pharmacy's not in.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the information that we're getting back is dependent on the insurance plan. So some insurances are giving you some really good data, and sometimes they're like, and that's not very helpful. Yeah.
With Connecticut Medicaid,
Yeah.
it will sometimes say drug not covered or prior authorization needed.
Yeah.
When really all it needs is a diagnosis code.
Ooh, okay. That's interesting. That could be getting popular too. I don't know if the people at home could hear it. That they're seeing that it's good, or no?
No, they can't hear it all.
Okay. So the comment had to do with in Connecticut with Medicaid that they're not returning results because the diagnosis code, the indication's not there. We're going to talk about how to get an indication with an ICD-10 on your prescriptions, and maybe that's something that you should look into as well. So what I wanted to say was, if your results are crummy, it's not PCC's fault, it's the PBM's fault. So we all can kind of agree on one place we know that there's problems, but we don't want you to stress out about this. Please just let us know. If you're the kind of person that likes to see trends and you're like, oh, it's always this type of plan or it's always this drug class, that's great, but otherwise just send us a screenshot. We'd love to try to get to the bottom of this. Any other thoughts on the real-time results? Okay, that's wonderful news. Okay, there's a lot to be said here too with like just that $55 copay. If there's like deductibles that these are intended to be like at that point that you're running this, you're going to see what's out of pocket, what their deductible is, if they have all that kind of stuff. So use those hovers, check them out, because I think the hovers and the red error messages, there should be some secret information in there for you. So other idea, if you feel like consistently you see no results and you've noticed that it's a particular insurance plan, we've created like a template letter so that you can push back on that and say, hey, we would really love to write for your insurance. We want to write prescriptions and get them covered. We don't have any data in our system, so why are you not participating? And kind of push back a little bit there. So we got some faces, so we'll get you the letter if you want to get involved and make your experience a little bit better. All right, let's talk about retail prescription history. I bet everybody has used this before. This is not new by any means, but I did want to highlight this is another service with outside data from SureScripts on behalf of the pharmacy benefit managers. So this is data that we present to you, but we don't create this. You've probably asked yourself why you can only query it once every 72 hours. That's just what they told us. We can't let you do it. So when you try to run it again later, or they're back 2 days in a row, that's a SureScripts requirement, and that patient consent box is checked by default. You guys live this life. You might have that in your paperwork that says, hey, you consent for us to know lots of stuff about you and reach out to those outside sources. But as the years go on, people are paying attention, and your patients may want to know that you're able to see this kind of information. The one thing I will say is that this is another demographics match. And it's not based on the insurance, it's in the EHR. And if you've ever seen information that the patient or the family says, I've never taken this in my life, and you believe them, because sometimes we see some nefarious stuff, but usually pediatric patients are pretty well behaved. This could be a mismatch in the SureScripts system. If it's a common name, we've seen some pretty crazy stuff. So please don't be shy. If you've seen some stuff and you feel like the family really believes that's not accurate for the patient, let us know. We will report that.
There's pros and cons of this, but is there a way whenever a new one is downloaded not to have all the old ones vanish?
Oh, you don't want them to vanish?
I mean, I know it's bad to have too much data, but sometimes, like, Yeah, sometimes it's a problem because I did it like a month ago and now all their old medicines are like vanished.
Well, it's paginated, so you can flip through the pages, and so you'll see, I think, up to 5 entries per page. So there's a little, it's like right here, this little guy. So it might be up to 2 years of data. I think that's probably what it is. There is a little, yeah, here in the disclosure at the bottom, it doesn't speak to the length of time, but I think it might be limited to 2 years.
I thought once, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like, let's say last month I downloaded data, and
Yeah.
now today I'm downloading data again. It seems like when it downloads like what happened in the past month, it erases everything before.
Interesting, okay.
Is that what you're finding?
I think it would be giving you a fresh set of data, but I would expect you to still see the stuff you saw last time.
I'd like to keep it 2 years would be perfect.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Prescription history, not retail prescription history. That's how I've been.
But if they got it, it's like I for something that's gone.
Yeah, retail prescription history is not only stuff that you prescribe, but other organizations and other specialists. And so this is a good way to see what your patient's up to outside.
Also, I wish there was a way to see what's the name of the doctor who prescribed it if it wasn't us.
So that is a great question. You're going to click on that little doctor icon there.
It doesn't work.
You're not getting data with it. See, that's coming from SureScript. So if you're consistently not, that little icon is meant to tell you who prescribed it, and then the little like list one should tell you what pharmacy it's been filled at, and the dates and things like that.
So sometimes we'll get 2 entries on the same date for the same medication.
Interesting.
If the SIG is present, it'll tell you who the doctor is. If there's no SIG, there's no other information.
So it's a double mystery. You don't even know, you don't know how they're taking it or who wrote it. That's interesting. I think you're onto something. Yeah. We made some changes many years ago to this data because it wasn't getting parsed out very well, and so it would have information, but it couldn't get it into our field so that it was, so we would instead like import what they sent you into a chunk instead of into the fields, if that makes sense. So maybe there's something that's going on there. Other commentary? I thought I saw a hand come up. Yes?
Is there a reason why sometimes the retail don't show up? Like, they were on it, they told you.
I think that has to do with the demographics match with SureScripts.
Okay.
And so imagine this is adult medicine, and people are just up to no good, and they're doctor shopping, they're paying cash at different pharmacies and stuff like that, or maybe they're using their nicknames. There's all sorts of stuff where like that demographics has to be pretty perfect for it to match up. And I don't think the kids are doing anything crazy here, but it could be something like that. We're also happy to challenge that, to say here you've got all the stuff in demographics, right? Everything's there, so you should be seeing some results, but maybe they're paying cash. That's hard to say. I wouldn't think so, but
But it should be, it should be like.
it should be across the board, like the whole country. Yeah, you should be seeing results. Yeah.
So Dewey is just affirming that SureScripts collates from many different sources, and some of those are complete sources and some of those are incomplete sources, and so we're only ever giving you the best of what's available, and sometimes that's pretty thin.
Yeah.
He also had some comments about PBMs. I know we've moved on,
No, that's
but
fine. No.
I just wanted to share that he was sharing that PBMs vary widely in how they use the service of the retail query, and so the more specific your examples are, the better we can research them, down to the level of like investigating that specific prescription benefit manager, for example, not just the drug and the dose and the facts of the prescription, but also like who's supposed to be covering it and why they might not be responding with good information for you.
Yeah, please reach out. If you start, now that you've learned a little bit more about it and you're keeping an eye on it, don't let it disrupt your patient care, but take a screenshot, send it when you're all done for the day, and we'd love to take a look. Here's one that I think we don't see a lot, but I want to bring your attention to it in case you are seeing that cute little icon. There's something called RxFill. This came out, I'll guess 5 years ago. This is information that when available, the pharmacy will send to SureScripts and then send it to you about what's been going on actually at the pharmacy. So if you see that cute little prescription filling icon, give it a click. And that will tell you what pharmacy that it was filled at, if it was dispensed, if it had to be transferred, and they can't do that with controlled substances. a lot of times you might have to do a short fill on something. If you're really low on stock, you might give them 5 and wait for the other stock to come in the next day. So you can see the history of that if this is available in your area. This is particularly important for when you do that short fill. If they only gave them 5 tablets and then the patient's calling you again and saying, I'm out of drugs, and you're like, what are you talking about? I gave you 30 days. You might go check out their profile in prescription history and see this. Do you guys even, does anyone even see this icon? I feel like it's not very popular. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but is this a matter of going to each pharmacy and training them to send them?
Wouldn't that be nice? We're putting you, we're putting you on the staff. Seriously.
Much like
Yeah.
getting records from hospitals, you know, checking the right box.
Yeah, I think taking the initiative to just say what's going on with this. It's called RX Fill, and it's part of the NCPDP script standard. This should be available, and I don't know if they just don't want you to know what they're up to, but it seems like it's good. It's good care all around to be able to see this type of information. We had someone in the back raise their hand. You do see it? I see it. Okay, awesome. All right, well, that's good news. Yes, question?
Dewey is additionally sharing that on last check, only about 10% of prescriptions have the responses from prescription benefit managers with the retail pharmacy information. So
it's low.
yeah, it's pretty low. It can be very helpful, but
Yeah.
only when provided.
Yeah.
It's really our understanding from when we built this, and he might add some information. Dewey, the question was, do you know why more pharmacies and PBMs don't participate? Our understanding is that it's not really it's an optional force, right? So it's an investment that they have to make in their infrastructure and building to connections, and I don't know. I'm guessing that Dewey adds that pharmacies don't support it very widely either. So we're sort of in this like no man's land of like different parties trying to talk to each other.
Yeah. But imagine if you wrote that prescription and then they're able to fill it, everything's going great, the insurance covers it, and then you can see that it's been dispensed to the patient. I mean, it's a great continuity of care that you can see. We don't know that they're taking it, right, after that. It's only so much that we can do. One other thing, this is kind of still in that, in case you missed it, we added in the last couple of years this active RX indicator. This was in response to, messy charts, and those weren't your fault. There was an easy way to over-duplicate all this stuff. And so every month when you would renew this or refill this or rewrite it, you would end up with a whole bunch of stuff, and you're like, what is going on? So we said, all right, let's let them clean them up. But then you clean them up, and you're doing such a great job. But then you accidentally cancel the one you just wrote. It sent a message to the pharmacy, now you're sad, and you have to redo it again. And so we're like, enough is enough. So we gave you this little RX indicator that will tell you of this whole pile of Ritalin LA, which one is the recent prescription. If you wanted to clean these up, you hit that Clean Up Med History button. It exposes a checkbox and a Select All button. You could select all, select some, and clean them up all at once. So you could, in theory, avoid the one where the prescription was just linked. I feel like I just had a point about this. That will go away after the course of treatment has ended. If it's a simple 30-day prescription with 5 refills, that's 180 days. And you'll see active RX that whole time because those refills at the pharmacy are still active. That might be why when you're deleting something that you're getting that. Send it to the pharmacy, and it was more than 30 days ago, but they had enough refills. The number of people that would come up to the counter and just say, fill everything on my profile. I say, all right, that's the kind of stuff. If they're not taking it anymore, you want to communicate that to the pharmacy so that they get rid of those refills. Comment from
just
Drew.
a question.
Oh.
Can you explain what happens when you just prescribe one of those drugs and they clean themselves up?
Oh, yes. And so part of the changes that we made, here's the thing. Everybody was going, you kind of learned, hey, I'll clean up the chart first and then I'll write something. You can just write the new prescription, like use that swish and rewrite that Ritalin LA. And if you still have duplicates, it should be combining those and getting rid of them for you. So maybe prescribe first and then go clean it up and see if you still have some. I know these charts got out of hand for a while with duplicates. If you're having trouble getting them to go away, let us know because we understand there's still some complexity that's out there.
I'm a little confused about if you get a request from the pharmacy to refill it, it doesn't show up in the chart anywhere, right, that you refilled it. And then sometimes it shows up here, sometimes it doesn't with dates. So
Yeah.
when you're looking back, you're wondering, like, where was that one I sent from the, so I was wondering
So,
if you could address that.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that was a popular wish on the list, and so we'll probably bring that one back. When you write a brand new prescription or refill or renew something from within the chart, you see that in the bottom of your visit. You always have that evidence, but the renewal requests don't sync back over. They don't have an encounter, and so that's part of the problem. It doesn't have a home. So like, what if we created a renewal encounter where that evidence was there? You'll see it in medication history in the EHR, but the way that's set up is kind of funky too. So then you're almost like extending what's there with a longer date, and it doesn't speak to the fact that it was a renewal from the pharmacy. I don't have it up on the screen, but in prescription history on the far right-hand side, it will say it was a renewal request, so you should be seeing it there. Keep an eye out, because if it doesn't feel like that's happening, take some screenshots of me, an example. We'll take a look. Yes?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Too many questions.
No.
And this is a basic question, and I'm glad I'm here at the screen. It's not related to this, but so the little loose RX.
Oh, the swishy.
loop,
The
yeah,
swish.
that's renew.
Yes.
Right, and RX is new prescription, right? Create
So-
new prescription.
Yes,
And
so the
they-
renewals, we were going to talk about this in a moment, but this
Okay.
helps, it gets us
Good.
there. So that swish is renew it exactly the way I wrote it last time.
Okay.
And the pencil pad is like, let's start with the basics of this, pull it open, and let me change some stuff about it. So they're very similar.
Do
Most people swish.
Do either of them cancel the old prescription?
No.
Okay.
So that's, I
But
understand where you might.
There's
yeah.
a button that I've done sometimes that says, great, this is canceled, and I sent a new one, but I don't know which one it is.
So that trash can is intended to send a cancel message, and we'll talk about how you configure that if you don't want it to.
Okay.
But it might be that you were using resend, because resend will pop up and say, I'll cancel that first one you did because I'm sending you a new one.
Okay, so Resend is live now.
Yes, resend is live now, but some of the improvements are coming.
Gotcha. Okay, and I don't know where that button is. So.
Right now, it only lives in the review and sign at the very bottom of the ribbon. So I can show you after this where that is. The Jets are back again. You guys are getting a treat. I was going to talk a little bit about the configuration of if you don't want it to send that cancel message to the pharmacy. There's some stuff that I think might be new news to people. Questions on this one? We've got about 20 minutes left and lots to talk about. The questions are incredible. I'm not telling you at all to not ask questions, but we will skip some of the material. Thoughts before we? What's that?
Reminder about our thing after lunch.
Oh yeah, and we do have the drop-in after lunch, so just come by. We'll show you everything that we possibly can. All right, so then I called this one, Build a Strong Foundation Under My Settings. Everything I'm about to talk about is your personal settings, so you don't have to agree with your colleagues. You don't have to do any of this. These are all optional things, and this is definitely an in case you missed it sort of part of the presentation. There's two different ways to do configuration, and one is your personal and one is the practice-wide, and I tried to highlight them here. If you log into ERX and you go to the queue and you don't see all that stuff in green, well, you need to sign up for administration. I helped someone do that earlier this week. You can check out reports or administration. You might have to ask somebody, depending on your privileges, to add stuff. But if you came to this class, I think you should be able to get in there and do some stuff with this. You don't have to ask anybody's permission to go into My Settings. That is your party, just like we talked about earlier. So that's all you. And this is homework you can do if you want. So we're going to focus on stuff that you can control under My Settings, and then we'll get into the practice-wide stuff. The My Settings page, this is what it looks like today. It will be the more refreshed version in the 10.4 release. We're not going to go through all of this stuff today, but we'll hit some of the highlights. First up is medication history, having kind of to do with canceling at the pharmacy. When I talked about that example of 30 days with 5 refills, it's good for half a year, and you really do truly probably want those refills to go away if you've canceled that medication. So sending that cancellation message does make sense, but sometimes it's like an oopsie, or sometimes it's like, it's my own business, I'm just cleaning up the chart. You don't have to tell anybody about this stuff. By default, unless you've changed this in your My Settings, it will always send that cancellation message. You can change it to never send it if that's your thing, or maybe you want the ask each time such that you'll be prompted at the point of hitting that trash can and say, do you want to send that cancel message? And you can decide. But not everybody likes pop-ups. So if you like the way it's happening now, just keep it that way. But you could do never or ask each time. We made some changes recently in the last couple of years about pharmacies, and so you may not be taking advantage of this either. This is one of the ones you should definitely tell your staff about in case they're not using this. There's two different things happening here. One has to do with the preferred status, and then the other one is copying across siblings. And if you've not made updates to this panel, it will be never for both of these. So, again, these are all just your preferences. Every time you add a new pharmacy right now, if it's set to never, that new pharmacy goes to the bottom of the list. It does not change the priority of it, does not make it the default pharmacy. That might be working perfectly for you. We had like a 50-50 mix of people that said, of course I want it to be the default, and some people were like, absolutely not. So you could do never make it the default, always make it the default, or ask me each time. So you guys kind of get the idea here. I go to add a new pharmacy, and if it says ask me each time, I'll get a prompt. Hey, do you want to make that the default? Because it could matter depending on those college kids and stuff like that. The siblings one is arguably cooler. When you add a new pharmacy to John Canning, he's got these famous brothers here. By default, what a cool guy. By default, it's never going to add the pharmacy to his siblings. And you might think, why doesn't it do that? Well, you can change that in your settings here. You can have it just every time copy that pharmacy to his brothers, or you can do ask each time, and then you can decide what makes sense, because maybe it's a complex family and not everybody's going to be using the same pharmacy. Is this new news to anybody in the room? Yeah. All right, we've got some star students that are like, whoa, so take this home. You'll have these slides. You can make these changes later or when you get home. All right, let's take a look at that swish, and there's a couple things to know here. We just kind of covered that blue swish is the easy way to renew that prescription exactly the way you wrote it. Depending on when you joined a PCC, you might have a different experience than someone else sitting in this room, but you have full capability to make these changes. There's two options here. If this box is checked, you'll swish it, and it will pop up so you can immediately send it to the pharmacy. Some of you have been around so long that when you swish it, instead it puts it down in review and sign, and you have to scroll down to send it, and that some of our newer offices miss this configuration. So we got a mixed bag here, but I'll show you the point of all this, is that if you want it to swish and have it pop open so you can send it immediately, go into My Settings and click this box. Or if you want it to swish, 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 and then you send them all at once, you can either leave it as is or go and uncheck that box. Your nursing staff, it depends on what their role is, they may not be able to send it, so having it swish and pop open just for them to hit save is going to frustrate them. So they might like to swish and leave it for you, but somebody like you that's just trying to process the prescription, you could swish and send is checked, swish and save is unchecked. It's a little bit confusing to say out loud. Questions on this one at all? And you will have these slides to go back and check out later. Oh, yes.
It's actually right above that. I've never noticed it before. I just saw that it says vacation hours.
Oh.
What happens with that?
So I put the slide in for vacation hours, and I was like, I'll take it out because it's not as exciting as you think. It's if you know you're going to be out of the office, you can go into vacation hours and say, I'll be out from this date to this date. It does not prevent you from logging in while you're on vacation. It does not prevent anyone else. Hopefully no one's logging in with your account. But what it does is it records any activity on your account while you're out of the office. And so if you're feeling like, yeah, see, I told you, not very exciting. It doesn't inform the patients. It doesn't bounce your renewals back from pharmacies, because that would be cool if it said, I'm not here, I'm busy. So really, it's just a logging setting. Yeah, see, not very exciting. If it told the pharmacies.
No, if it could forward
to somebody else. That would be pretty cool if you could say, while I'm out, push it to so-and-so's queue. Okay, that's a good one.
Jen's writing that one down.
All right, Jen, perfect. I am skipping some of the stuff that's in there, but let's see. Oh, here's a question you might ask yourself now that you've learned about the swish. You say, well, where is it? It's not on some of these other prescriptions, and that's on purpose. So you can't swish something that you haven't sent yet. So it might be pending that you haven't finished processing it for today. You can't, and you're probably not going to refill it if you wrote it today. So if you're on today's encounter, you can't renew something from today. you might be going back 6 months to a chart to look at what your patient's been up to. If you're trying to prescribe from that visit, you won't be able to renew something that you wrote in that visit from 6 months ago. So just keep an eye out for it. It's stuff that hasn't been sent yet, or that you wrote it, with that same day. All right, then I'll pose a couple questions here, and I'm bringing this up because I'm going to tell you the answer to all of these. So I'm having trouble finding the pharmacy that my patient needs. I don't even know how many thousands of pharmacies that are in there. I wish it was easier to find commonly used medications. How do I remember, or how do I help my staff remember to send a coupon for this drug? I've got too many results and it's driving me crazy. And this one's popular. I can never find pantoprazole suspension in the system. I've got answers. Yeah, I've got answers to all this stuff. You guys want to stay till 1? I've got so many things to tell you. Okay, here it comes. These are practice-wide settings. So again, you will need this administration box checked off in your account to get into this stuff. But if you can't make this change, go home and tell someone that can change it for you, because you were good students and you should be able to do this stuff. Okay, first up. You can add custom search terms or nicknames to any pharmacy. So in your area, you probably say it's the CVS by the hospital, or it's this pharmacy next to the train station. You don't have to search around for these anymore. You can add secret little names to your pharmacies. All of this work will happen under administration. What'll happen, you pull this up, search for the pharmacy that you're having trouble finding, or the one you want to put a cute little nickname with, enter it and hit save. So what that'll look like is you're in the patient's chart, and I made this was a silly example I made years ago, but we're sticking with it now, that I made. Walgreens is next to the taco truck. And so I can search for Walgreens, and I'll see the little clarifier that it's next to the taco truck, but I also can search by taco. So if you want to say, there you go. See, that was worth it alone that I stuck with this. So you can search by the names is what I'm getting at. If you're in a big metropolitan area and there's a Duane Reade on every corner, well, you can give it the name of the place that you find is easier to recognize. And once it's saved to the patient's chart, you'll see here, Walgreens next to the taco truck. Because when you say to the family, and they say, oh, I'm going to go to that Walgreens, and you say, next to the taco truck, and they'll say, yeah, and then so you know you got the right place. Okay, we got a point here. So maybe next to the taco store. I don't know. Use it wisely. Just know that everything you're configuring, everyone will be able to see this. So there you go. Adding custom search terms. We had a shout out to this one earlier. There's plenty of drugs that are just kind of hard to find, or this example with the saline nebs. You don't know if it's sodium chloride or normal saline or 0.9%. Like, you don't know where it's going to be. Maybe you don't really write prescriptions for this, but you get the idea. If something is hard to find, you can create a search term that you and the rest of the practice likes, so that at the point of prescribing, you can search for that instead. This will also be under administration, and there's little pathways at the bottom of all these slides to get in here. You could, this is a great idea we got years ago from another doctor. He said, oh, I like this search term. What if I made a category? And you go in and pick a little category called allergy, and then you assign all the things you like to prescribe for that. So you could have one for ADHD, or one, the methylphenidates, you find all of its friends, and that way you can search by that instead. So get creative with this. You could do this to help with brand and generic mapping, too, because if you like to prescribe generically, but you're in methylphenidate and it's hard to know which one's which, you could give it a little search term and make that easier to find. But there's more. There's more stuff that's in here. Oh, and this is just an example where I could search now by that term instead of looking for the drug. You also can add custom medication warnings, and that sounds scary, but they're like little notes. You're in a very similar panel where you can add that message that you want to show up, and that will be when you're searching that you'll see that. So if you know you have coupons for some of these brand new things that are expensive, you can add a little note. Maybe Dr. Diazio will show you some of his sassy comments he has said. You had some great ones back in the day. They were all like, don't buy into big pharma. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So no one else is going to see these but the people in your office, so maybe have a little bit of fun. You might know that a pharmacy never covers that. You could say Medicaid never covers this. Or the ofloxacin, you can do the ofloxacin switch. You could write that on some of those. You might just have a policy that you don't want people to prescribe that. Go ahead and put a little note in there. something kind of relevant, you might say on Adderall XR that nobody's got this stuff. So just perhaps consider an alternative. Or you could say this is the practice-wide alternative. Don't even do this. If you find yourself doing a lot of safety checking, overriding, and you probably are, if you are constantly typing in the same message every time in administration, you can have that set up so that you don't need to type it. It'll always be there in that drop-down. And if you really don't like these, you could delete those as well, but create yourself a custom override reason. Everybody would see this, but go ahead and create that if it makes sense. And I've got the little pathway there as well. There are so many drugs and so many statements in the system, and I didn't say this earlier, but that searching is based on what's appropriate for your patient's age. So you'll see a shorter list under QuickRx, and if you want to get to everything, go to full product search. But even then, you might say, this is so much stuff in QuickRx. You have the capability to control that in these panels. So pick out your top 10 favorite drugs someday, go in and look and say, I don't ever want to see these other versions of albuterol. They're more appropriate for the hospital, or they're just super outdated. And you can hide those from QuickRx in the search results. They're not gone forever. You'll still see them in full product search, but you can fully optimize this, both with the drugs and the statements. And I know I'm cruising through all this stuff and you're going, oh, overload, but we can definitely talk about this afternoon. So that one's in orderable exclusions. Additionally, you can create any med that's not in the system. If you want a sentence for albuterol that matches what you do because everything in the system isn't quite right, you can do that too with that administration privilege. And again, these are going to be practice-wide. By default, we added an APNO and a magic mouthwash. You might use slightly different ingredients for both of those. If you want one of these super cool itemized recipes, we can work with you. If your butt paste has a couple different ingredients or whatever fancy word you use, we're happy to do that. I will gently interrogate you with what ingredients you like, because if you say nystatin, I'll say, well, there's 3 different kinds. Like, which one do you actually want? This will help that set of ingredients get to the pharmacy to prescribe what you want. Things like pantoprazole, they know how to make it. You don't have to tell them. But pantoprazole, omeprazole, clonidine, all of those are manually compounded by your pharmacy, so be nice. Those are not commercially available. They have to grind those up, and that's why you don't see them in the system. So if that's something that you want to add, come see us this afternoon, and I can show you easily how to do that. This is a great place to add speech therapy and occupational therapy prescriptions. You can do that as well. Yes?
They don't come up with a signature, though.
They won't. We cannot put signatures by default on prescriptions because prescriptions, I know that one's not really a prescription, but they have to have a wet signature with a pen to be considered legal.
So you have to print them out, sign them, and then fax them.
Yeah, that would be the best way to do it. Yeah. In your state, if we're talking about the speech therapy, the occupational therapy, like referrals, if your state does not need it to be on prescription paper, you could do it in the forms tool with the auto signature, but yeah, if it needs to be a prescription, you'll want to do it from here. I am skipping over a lot of details about how to do this based on just the time frame. I'm starting some ideas in your head, and you say, I want to learn more about this. We have tons of great documentation on Learn, which Sarah helps to curate. So we got answers for all this and instructions that you can use when you get home. Oh, I love showing you this one. If you don't like entering a reason when you're deleting stuff, we can shut that off. But it'll shut it off for everybody, so you'll have to choose wisely. Some people really like entering that, but we can quickly change you to option number 2, where it's a simple sort of yes/no question. All right, we are almost out of time. I'm going to cover a couple quick, easy things, and then we'll go. And I'm happy to stay late if people are having fun and want to learn. You're welcome to stay, or if you're hungry, you can head out whenever. This is just a couple things for solutions for support issues. We did add Neffy 1 milligram. Within the last month, but it sounds like Neffy's causing trouble. So we're gonna, okay, all right, so maybe not as much trouble as we thought, but you still think something.
No, I think this fixes it.
Okay. Once a month, we get the drug data updates from First Data Bank, so things might go off the market or they change a little bit, and sometimes new stuff comes to fruition. So we were getting phone calls for a good month or two saying, I know Neffy exists, and it just wasn't in the database yet. So if you ever find yourself looking for it, hit full product search, and if it's still not there, let me know, because I'd love to look for it when the next drug database update comes through. Additionally, there was an issue with Relexi, and it was slightly different than the Concerta entry. But in this drop-down, there were 2 chunks of options. And the default was at the top, and it said all that same stuff, but then it said methylphenidate next to it. And if you didn't know it was in there, you would say DAW Relaxi, but then it would say dispense methylphenidate, and then the pharmacy gets it, and that's why they'd call you and say, what do you want? Because you're sending me mixed signals. That was a problem, and that's been fixed. So Relaxi should be better now. Concerta, better in October. Here's a little cheat sheet about the phone with methylphenidates. Here's what all of these actually are, and so you can take a picture of this, you can save this forever. You can go add those custom medication warnings so that you put next to each one of these what the brand name is. If you like to look at this, you also could do it with the dexmethylphenidate. You know, all of its friends. I know all these if you want help trying to figure out which one's which. You can also just search from the brand name and let it substitute, and that might be the easier way than struggling with all this, you know, methylphenidate city over here. You might feel like everything's out of stock, and it is. It's really unfortunate. I don't have great news for you, except that these 2 links at the bottom will bring you to, it's pretty up to date, I'd say probably once a week. It will tell you what the status is of all those out of stock medications. It is oftentimes manufacturer specific, and so you can go look at these. You'll be able to click on these from the slides for anybody that's scrambling to write them down. The ASHAP, that one's the pharmacy-based one. There's some pretty funny comments that you'll see in there. They'll say like, Teva's out of stock, reason, won't tell us, you know, that kind of stuff. And so if you get a chuckle about this stuff like I do, definitely go look at it, but it will tell you what's going on with Adderall. It won't really tell you, but you'll be able to confirm that you're probably gonna have a problem with this. And I think sometimes, depending on the drug, it might tell you if things are looking better. So take a look at those. I don't have great news about this because there's no, wouldn't it be nice if there was like an industry-wide place to say, what's the inventory of this drug at these pharmacies? Maybe someday. But there's, people do rob pharmacies, and so if they somehow find out where all the goods are, there's just all sorts of stuff. You might have luck when you call the pharmacy, they'll tell you what's in stock, or they might say, send your patient. But then if the patient calls, they might not be asking for exactly the right thing either. So there's just a lot, or 2 people walk in and take the 60 tablets they had before they get there. So I send my love to you. I know this is not fun, but this is kind of where we're at right now. If you do receive a change request, if you're signed up for these and you get an electronic out-of-stock message, you might say, cool, but you tell me amoxicillin's out of stock, and then you say, do you want to keep amoxicillin or do you want to approve it? And you're like, why did you do this? This is the way the messages are formatted back from the pharmacies. Click on replace. This is probably not very well known. If they send you an out-of-stock message and their suggestions are silly, click on replace. It will pull amoxicillin back up and you'll say, okay, but change the medication. Click on change med and then you can switch it to a different drug that is in stock. The only caveat that I'll tell you here, this does not work like resend. You can't send this to a different pharmacy. This would be changing the drug and sending it back to the same pharmacy, because Walgreens sent you that message, you have to respond back to them. It's like a text, you know, kind of thing. Hopefully these things will begin to resolve. If you've ever looked for these first compounding kits, they're not in there. Stop looking. They're just not in there. The data that's available in the drug database is FDA-approved medications. These are safe. They are popular. They're at the pharmacy all the time. Compounding is not subject to FDA approval. So these are just simply excluded from the list, and that's why they're not in the database. You can add these under custom meds, where we're talking about adding that magic mouthwash. You can add these as well. If you've ever found yourself looking for omeprazole 2 milligrams, but you get to this entry and you're feeling pretty good, and then you say, Morgan, it's not in the list. This is the powder and packet one. I don't know if anyone even uses this anymore. You know how like Miralax, you get the little powder, you mix it up? Well, omeprazole has the same option. So it says suspension, because when you mix the powder in water, it's a suspension now, but it's not the one you want. So you will never see the 2 milligrams in here. That is one of the ones that the pharmacy has to manually compound. But you can, it's available in this first compounding kit, but you just learned those aren't in the database. So there's a little bit of a dance here. First compounding kits, you can add them. The omeprazole, just don't even go there. This is a great one that you might uncheck from seeing in your search results, so you're not even looking at it if you don't prescribe this one. here's how you add an indication. So with the insurance plan that is seemingly asking you for those codes before you get the insurance results, this is the way to do that. In the indication section, it will prompt you with, if it matches, items from the problem list. So if your patient has ADHD of any of the flavors and you're prescribing ADHD med, it's going to see that as one of the options from the problem list. You can always expand and see everything on your problem list, as well as the most common indications for that medication. If you're going sort of off the grid with some stuff, you may not see it there. You can select any indication that's available here. These are pre-coded with ICD-10 codes. If you love configuring this, I'm really sorry to tell you, you don't have any control over this. It will be a very high-level ICD-10 code, and this will go to the pharmacy. When you hover, do you see that's what I was going to say. You have to hover over the indication to see the secret code.
So it shows the indication, and I have never tried to hover, but the pharmacies
They're saying they're not getting it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then they make us write in the notes F90.1.
Okay. So it is the F90.1 that you're sending. That's really interesting because we can see, there's something called XML. We take the prescription you wrote and now it's in computer talk to send it, and it's definitely in there. That is interesting. We can make some phone calls. I mean, yeah, let us know is it a particular pharmacy chain that you're seeing it with, or it's across the board. Keep an eye on it and shoot me an email. And I am breezing through some of this stuff. Okay, time-based units of measure. I guarantee you've seen this error message before, and you've wondered, what the heck's going on? Time-based units of measure are days, weeks, and months. Back in the day, when we used to write prescriptions, you'd say, give that patient 7 days of this drug. SureScripts doesn't like that, because we don't know how much 7 days is. And so we have to send these prescriptions through SureScripts to the pharmacy. You have to pick something that's quantifiable, like one tube or a 30-gram tube. Some of your dosing statements will automatically default to 1 day or number of days, and you didn't do it on purpose, but you will have to go in and pick out something that makes a little bit more sense. SureScripts says hard no. You can remove those from your options completely, but you might want them for speech therapy and things like that. So you have to decide where you want to give up having that option. But that's an easy one. That's what's going on there. You will see this a lot with the topical treatments. SPIs, okay, so you have your NPI, and we know a bunch of information about you and your address where you're prescribing from, your DE number, we have all that kind of good stuff. When you get ready to prescribe with any EHR, and if you work at the hospital, you have one of these from there as well, we take your NPI and your location, and we create something called a SureScripts provider identifier. That's what that SPI is. So you have an SPI for every location that you work at. So if you have multiple locations with PCC, you have an SPI for each of those. You have an SPI when you do rounds at the hospital. You have an SPI at your old EHR that you used to work at. If you don't have an SPI configured for your account, you're going to see stuff like what's here on the right-hand side. And you might say, I've been prescribing at my office for years. Why am I seeing this now? It might be that your encounter on the EHR side simply doesn't have the location listed. This happens a lot with phone notes or portal messages. Your patients don't know they don't even know what an SPI is. They don't know what location you're at. So by the time you get to ERX, we need to know what location you're at, simply for that SPI and the transmission of the prescription to the pharmacy. If you open up a new office, we take care to try to make sure that that's all set. You might open up fake locations like telemedicine. That's where this one happens. When you add a new location, you have to go into the ERX panel and add that location to your ERX profile in order for that to work. We can help you fix this very easy, but if you're seeing that, I'd first check your encounters in the EHR, make sure that those have a location, and just note if it's kind of like a newer location for your practice, that's probably it. But we'll get to the bottom of it. Call us anytime. You don't have to try to figure this out on your own. We are almost done. This is just a funny one. You can't send C2s to Amazon. You might want to. Everybody's sending stuff to Jeff Bezos, but you can't send C2s, and it won't tell you that. It'll say EPCS, but it means the 3 through 5s. You can't do the C2s there. So we have on our wish list to just warn you about that. If you've prepped an Adderall prescription, you try to send it to Amazon, that will let you know that that's going to be a problem. What's that? I know. Maybe that's just a shout out. Your local pharmacists and pharmacies could use your support.
We did a nickname for that.
Did you? Perfect.
Yeah, we did a nickname for Amazon that says does not accept
That
Schedule
is,
2.
you are such a great student. Yes, go into the configuration panel for the pharmacy nicknames and just say, don't do it. They won't have it. All right, that was, surprisingly, that was the last slide. There's obviously so much more stuff to talk about. We have the walk-in clinic after lunch. Please stop by. There's a couple of us here in person that can help you with any of the configuration that you just learned about. Any final questions that people want to talk about before you head to lunch? Come find me anytime. I really do mean that.
Just with the favorites, like, we have so many favorites from the drop-down, which we want.
Yeah.
When you use the, how does it decide which are the tiles? How does the system deciding that?
The tiles is
I can't
based
make
on.
the tiles be what I want.
So you're one of our original clients that started with this, and so we had so many favorites that were being generated. Let's say you have 9 showing up. It's in alphabetical order, but it's based on when you use it in theory. And I think that there is some logic issues with the panels, with the tiled section, that a lot of people are now drawn to the drop down instead. If your list is unruly and you don't like it anymore, we can help you get rid of
Is there
those.
any way to have a big list in the drop-downs, but still just pick which tiles I want?
You can't say I want these
No.
specific ones to be. That's a wish that we have, that you just pick your 9 top favorites. The drop down at the top of that, there's a search field where you could just start typing in Vyvanse and get to your favorites. If you pull it up, I can. Yeah, the tiled section. Yeah, some people eventually just turn the tiled section off because it wasn't really. They didn't feel like it was predictable. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to turn off my mic and then I can chat with whoever. Thank you. Thank you.